This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. Criterion Games is mainly known for their wonderful contributions to the arcade racing genre with their Burnout franchise. Where many racers may focus on realism, these developers wanted to provide something that put the player into high-octane car chases and turned their car into a weapon. Their Burnout franchise was arcade racing at its finest. After several Burnout games, Criterion wanted to experiment with another genre and bring that same level of quality from the Burnout games to it. During the PS2 generation, Criterion made the jump to make a memorable first-person shooter. This game would go on to be a beloved game by many FPS fans. I present to you a look back at Black. Criterion spent most of their early career working on their Burnout franchise. The team saw that many racers at the time were aiming for realism and they wanted to focus on the more action side of it. Burnout would embrace the high-speed chases and over-the-top action. Cars would be used as weapons and the crashes would be the highlight of this. From 2001 to 2005, Criterion worked on several Burnout games. With each one, they were trying to perfect their formula. And while they were focusing on their arcade racing series, the team also had another passion. They wanted to eventually tackle the first-person shooter genre. Criterion aimed to provide their own spin on the first-person shooter genre. Hollywood action films were used as a baseline for their inspiration, along with TV shows like Alias, Prison Break, and 24. They wanted to capture the adrenaline and intensity found in the best of Hollywood action films, and put that same energy into a first-person shooter. The developers wanted the game in a modern setting that revolved around black operations. Games at the time like Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid covered a similar area, but Criterion wanted to move away from the stealthier aspects of those games and focus more on the shooting that could occur during those operations. Early on, they wanted Black's weapons to be the stars of the game, so much so they coined the term gun porn. The weapons were going to be lethal and over the top. The environments were going to react to the player's actions and reflect that chaos. This led to the team paying attention to the little details that added to the atmosphere, with lots of particle effects like steam and smoke being a factor in the game. Essentially, Criterion wanted to make a game that was for the PS2 and original Xbox, but with a presentation that pushed these systems. The guns were going to sound powerful, along with being deadly instruments of destruction with how the environments could be destroyed. The game was going to provide a variety of different levels to the player. Black was going to be a linear focused game, but one level might be more explosive, while another might have some optional paths with different level pacing. Just like their Burnout series, Black was always built in mind to provide a new series of games. This was going to be a love letter to the action films of the 80s and the 90s, but instead of watching it like a film, the player could be an active participant in the fights. In February 2006, Black was released to the world. Black is very straight and to the point with its gameplay. You will be spending most of your time using a nice variety of weapons to blow away many enemies. For a title during the PS2 era, the impact of your shots and sound effects are extremely satisfying. Each of the guns sound and feel like deadly weapons. In some games, the guns can sound like toys. Here, they sound like instruments of destruction, and this factors into the player feeling empowered each time you fire them. The impact of your shots is seen through how the enemies react to getting hit, along with the nice amount of destruction within the environments. In many cases, cover can be blown off or outright destroyed. This is best seen in the cemetery level where all of the gravestones can be destroyed. Your shots will leave a large amount of bullet holes along with some nice effects. This is probably one of the few shooters that features the gunfire kicking up a large amount of dust. Exchanging fire with your enemies will kick up so much dust that at times it can hinder your vision, and you will need to consider this before you move to your next position. Other details like shell casings being ejected from your guns and seen on the ground enhances the immersion of the gunfights. The destruction is impressive for an older title, and it feels like the developers wanted to hit many of the shootout check marks from well-known films. For example, many of the pieces of cover can break, and sometimes walls can be blown open. There's lots of explosions and plenty of glass to shoot as well. But the talent of the developers comes into how they execute in using those action movie checkmarks, and here they succeeded. The developers nailed the feeling of the shooting along with the presentation of your shots. These little touches and attention to detail successfully creates this action fantasy to the player. For anyone who is a fan of 80s action movies, you will feel right at home here. While the campaign only has 8 missions, each of these brings a nice variety in location and weapons to experience something consistently fresh. Black features many different areas, from a dark forest to a cemetery, a power plant, and more. Some of the locations and areas are paying tribute to great action films as well. There is a spot in one of the levels that is right out of the standoff part in The Rock. Black provides a good variety of weapons to use, from different pistols, SMGs, assault rifles, a sniper rifle, an LMG, and more. You can change the fire rates on some of your weapons to fit your playstyle, and some come equipped with silencers. Stealth is only provided in theory, since there isn't really a fully realized stealth system at play here. You can carry a large amount of grenades, and they are very deadly. My only issue with them is that when you throw them, it feels like you're throwing a brick rather than a grenade. There's a small amount of different foes that you will face as well, from different soldiers to shotgunners to riot soldiers. Another thing to note is that you can only carry 2 weapons at a time. This will come into play in what you want to be prepared for. Having sniper rifles can give you an advantage and a lot of range on your enemies. An RPG has a few shots, but it can take out many foes. Or a shotgun is great for close range and pushing back the rushers. The enemies are not the smartest foes in the world, but they get the job done and are a real threat. They range from being average to dumb, but their shots are deadly and can quickly overwhelm you. I appreciated the effort in having some different enemy variety, but the shotgun rushers can feel a bit cheap at times, as they can take an extreme amount of bullets to take them down. You can shoot them in the head to kill them quickly, or use a shotgun to push them back and then throw a grenade at them. The levels are very linear, but the game doesn't feel like it's constricting the player. There's no objective markers to clutter up the screen. The level design is done in such a way that you always know where you need to go based on where the enemies are coming from. Along with this, there's a few levels that give you some alternate paths to seek out. There are secondary objectives to seek out as well, and some can provide you with better weapons for that level.
Keller J, Sergeant First Class, serial number 717841.
Black does feature a story, but it isn't really the main star of the game. That is dedicated to the gameplay. I did not find myself getting very engaged in the overall narrative, and there is not much character development here either. What the cutscenes do have is a nice presentation, because you feel like you are a fly on the wall during these secret meetings. The cutscenes have some nice presentation, but the story isn't that great, but it also doesn't get in the way of the gameplay either. There are a few areas that I would love to see fixed in a re-release or remaster. An auto mission is how you cannot change the sensitivity of your aiming. The aiming is not perfect, but I wish that I could finally tune it better to enhance the experience how I wanted it. Another auto mission is the lack of any gore within the game. There's some satisfying destruction and impact animations, but adding dismemberment would have only added more satisfying elements to the shooting. I do wish that there was a way to turn off the blur that occurs when you reload. The focus on the gun is a nice effect, but it's one that I wish you could toggle from the main menu. And the checkpoints are not the best at times, with some deaths resulting you going back 10 or so minutes. I know that a common criticism at the time was a lack of multiplayer. While something like that would have been interesting, I would have preferred that Black offered a co-op option instead. Since the game had levels already made for single player, why not implement a two-player co-op option to run through the campaign with a friend? The game was released during a generation where many games featured local co-op options. At the same time, there is something to be said about the developer making a short and sweet single-player experience that is complete bliss from beginning to end. Not every game needs to provide you with hundreds of hours of gameplay or feature multiplayer or even co-op to extend the runtime. For me, Black fits nicely next to games like Vanquish, where the focus is on the single player and it provides an excellent and timeless experience that you can enjoy in an evening. Black is such a special game from the PS2 and original Xbox era. It was a great example of a developer showing how they could apply their quality from one genre and seamlessly apply it to another. Black's focus was on the presentation of its guns along with the stellar gameplay, and in these areas it did not disappoint. In many ways, Black remains a timeless, underrated shooter that deserved more attention than it got. The sad part about this game is how it never received another entry, even though Criterion wanted to make more games set in this world. Black 2 was actually in development for the PS3 and Xbox 360, and it was going to feature co-op. Sadly, the ideas for a sequel never got out of the very early developmental stage. Black deserves a second chance at that attention. A solid remaster of this amazing title could go a long way into getting people talking about this game again. Black delivered a focused single-player experience with a great presentation and solid shooting that made the player feel the power of these weapons. The game properly conveyed the deadly nature of the weapons, along with featuring the right amount of over-the-top elements to keep the game more in the realm of being grounded than silly. Criterion succeeded at applying their talent from the arcade racing genre to the first-person shooter genre and created a memorable game. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.